Welcome to the podcast. I'm Whitney with Wright Homes, and we're here with Taylor Security National. Today we are going to talk about rentals, and I know that can be pretty popular where people got in at a good interest rate and they don't want to sell. They want to utilize that as a good investment. So, Taylor, can you explain a little bit the difference of is that different loan-wise, and what are the specifics of that?
Yeah, for sure. So if someone already owns a home and is wanting to turn that into a rental, what we have to do is when they go to buy the new home, right, they're basically applying for a second mortgage, right, because they've got their old one.
Yep.
So what we have to do is we have to use rent. Most people don't qualify for two at once. Some people do, but those that don't, we have to use the future rental income on their property that they're exiting to help qualify, to help offset that old mortgage payment.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So it basically allows it to be a wash if everything goes perfectly.
Yeah.
If their mortgage payment is $2,000 and they can get rent for $2,000, great. We basically forget about that old mortgage payment.
Does that lease have to be signed at that time?
It does have to be signed. So
Okay.
That's the thing, is the lender does require a few documents. We can't just say they plan on doing it and market rents are around $2,000. We actually have to have someone sign an agreement that says they're going to move in after closing. Just barely, they came out with a rule, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So they're the ones that pretty much put together the loan guidelines of what we can or can't do. And they just came out and said that we have to make sure that lease agreement starts before their first mortgage payment is due on the new one.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, and then also we have to have record of a security deposit now. So we have to have the lease agreement signed, and then we also have to show that the buyer has received a security deposit. So with those things, then we can use the rental income to offset the old mortgage payment. So basically, they're just trying to qualify for the new one.
Yeah.
We don't really take into account the old one at that point.
Okay.
So that is much easier. Well, I will say that it's a different animal, because if you're buying an investment, so instead of buying a new primary residence, if you're instead staying at your home and buying a rental property, it's actually easier to qualify, because we really only qualify you on that new mortgage payment, and you're going to have rental income to offset that old mortgage payment, right?
Right.
But the tricky part is lenders require much more money down to be able to buy a rental property. So it's significantly more. So
Do we have a set percentage that they require?
So it's usually about 20%. We can do less than 20% if you're buying a rental, 20% down. But it gets a lot more expensive rate-wise. Okay. And, in comparison, if you're buying a primary residence, it's only 3 or 5% down, so it's a big difference. That's why a lot of people will just kind of house hop, is what I call it, where they'll just turn their old place into a rental, because they're able to do that by buying a primary residence, every year or every other year, and turning the old place into a rental, because it only requires 5% down. If you were to do 20% down on every rental property, you'd run out of money fast. And it's not even run out of money fast. It's it's hard to just come up with that, right?
Yeah.
Even just for your first home, right?
Yeah.
Almost impossible. You got to wait years and years and years to be able to do that. So that is the one way that a lot of people, kind of that house hopping deal, that a lot of people will accumulate rentals.
Okay. So we've talked about how it's different as far as down payment. Is there a difference in interest rate, or can they get the regular interest rate that they're seeing?
There is a difference in interest rate. So typically a lender will look at it and say, okay, it's an investment property. It's higher risk to the lender because the owner of the property isn't actually living there. So there's a higher risk that they're going to stop making mortgage payments on a place where they don't live than a place where them and their family are living, right?
Yeah.
And so because there's a higher risk that payments aren't going to be made, there is that higher interest rate that they charge. So, and it's typically about 0.75% higher in rate. So if rates are around 7% for just a primary residence, then an investment property could be anywhere from 7.75 up to 8%. So it is quite a bit higher. But with the credits that you guys offer right now as Wright Homes towards your buyers for your preferred lender incentive, a lot of investors are using that credit, that 3% credit, to buy down the rate so that there isn't that big increase in rate. Yeah. Okay. You guys are essentially paying that for them.
So tell me a little bit about, so we have our townhome community. Mm-hmm. First time home buyer can come in, buy their townhome with us. Mm-hmm. Maybe 2 years down the line, they're like, we need something a little bigger. We've kind of outgrown our townhome. They look for, let's say, our Jackson community. It's kind of our first single family entrance home right now. Mm-hmm. And we did, I know, specifically design basements in those that did have an entrance to try and make it more affordable. Can you explain why we did that mm-hmm. in the aspect of making it easier for them maybe to buy that home?
Yeah. I think I was actually the one that requested that, to be fair. So
shout out to Taylor.
I was like, when talking to you guys and potential buyers, that was kind of a big thing that I was seeing, is that people were opting, because right now what's happening is people that are transitioning to a single family, they're going from their townhome to a single family, the monthly payment is almost doubling for them, right? They might be going from a $1,500 mortgage payment up to a $3,500 mortgage payment. Yeah.
It's an investment.
That's scary. Mm-hmm. When you're all of a sudden paying that much more a month. So to kind of help with that, a lot of people have been looking for places where they will in the future or right out the gate be able to rent out the basement. So that extra, if it's $1,000 to rent out a 1-bedroom basement apartment, that $1,000 is going towards their $3,500 payment, and it's dropping it to $2,500, which is way more realistic and doable and not as scary for a lot of people. So the changes that you guys made, or the lots that you guys put together in Jackson, allow for those basement apartments and basement entrances, which is a big deal. And obviously it is more to finish the basement and whatnot, but I think being able to offer that to buyers gives you and the buyers a lot more flexibility mm-hmm. when looking at building, because there's a lot of people that do want to build, but there aren't a whole lot of builders that are doing basement apartments. You know, so it's really nice that you guys are offering that in Jackson, just to kind of help with kind of the market that we're in and with where rates are at, to help buyers kind of with their plans with building a house. So.
Does that change at all of how they apply for the loan?
If
it's going to be a basement apartment?
A little bit. So it kind of depends. So if they can qualify for the higher payment, so the $3,500 payment,
they're fine.
They can
worry about it on their own.
Yeah. There are new changes in guidelines that allow us to use, if a basement apartment is finished, has a separate entrance, is considered an ADU, we can use the market rent for that basement. So if in the area, if that basement apartment is being rented out for, let's just say $1,200 in the area, we can use that $1,200 as income to actually help them qualify for that higher payment. Mm-hmm. So if they can't qualify for that higher payment, we can actually, as long as the basement is built out, it's considered an ADU, then we can use that to help qualify them, which is a big deal. So especially for those that can't qualify for that higher payment, because they need that income to just budget and be able to make that house work.
Okay, so we're talking about someone who's going from our townhome project to Jackson. What if they decide, what is the time frame they either need to stay in that townhome before turning it into a rental? Is there rules on, like, what if that's after a year? What if it's after 3 years? What rules are there in when something can go from a primary residence to an investment property?
Yeah, so on the lending side, when you sign on a house as your primary residence, you're expecting, or you're signing that you are going to live there for at least a year. Like, that's your intent. So Typically a year is how long you'll have to stay in the townhome for. Okay. On the tax side of things, though, what you want to consider is capital gains. If you are ever going to turn a house into a rental property and sell at some point, you'll want to kind of consider capital gains and how that plays into your profits. So I'm not a CPA. I'm not an attorney, whatever I got to say here. But this is how I understand it, is that if you have a home that you have lived in for 2 out of the last 5 years, and you sell that home, but you've lived in the last 5 years with that property, you personally lived there 2 out of the last 5, then there are no capital gains tax, or there's no capital gains tax until a certain point, which I think is like $500,000.
Okay.
So that's how I understand it. Now, if you only live there for a year, and let's say you move out of it and go to Jackson and live in a single family home, but then you sell that townhome. If we look back over the past 5 years, if you only lived there 1 out of the past 5 years, you are going to have capital gains tax. So, and one misconception is that capital gains tax, you could actually have more tax than what you made off the property. That's actually not the case. You only pay capital gains tax off of the gain of the property. So if you sold it for $100,000 more than what you bought it for, you're only paying capital gains tax off of that $100,000. You're not paying capital gains tax on the full $500,000 of the property. You're only paying it on the gain. So you're still going to get money back. You're still going, as long as the property value went up, right? But it's not like you're going to lose out all of your gain on the property. Really, it's only going to be about 20% of
what you're benefiting from anyway.
Yeah, of what you're benefiting. Yeah, benefiting.
It's not going to hurt you negatively if you.
It's not like you're going to lose more than what you're
going to owe
put
money.
Into it. Yeah, it's not like you're going to owe money. Yeah.
Okay.
Because if for whatever reason, if you sold it for less than what you bought it for, then there's no capital gains tax because you didn't have any gain. You actually had a loss. Mm-hmm. So then you're not paying anything. So, anyways, hopefully that wasn't too complicated, and I feel like I do understand it pretty good, but I'm not an accountant.
But talk to your tax professional.
Talk to your tax professional, yes.
Okay, perfect. I know that you and I both have kind of tried to utilize this investment property. Both of us, I know, have a townhome in one of our projects, and I think for a second, I would like to highlight how awesome it is to have. I know we have a cap in our communities in our townhomes, but we do have availability for rentals, and I personally have seen how nice it is to have a townhome.
When you say cap, you mean cap of how many
rentals we allow,
properties you allow in that community.
Yes. So out of our available units, how many investment properties can come in and be rented?
That way privately. There's not.
We don't want it to turn into 180 rental properties.
Yeah. Right.
We love the homeowner feel of our subdivisions, and we want to keep it that way, but we also can see the potential of personal investors coming in and being able to utilize our townhomes. Mm-hmm. So our 4-bedroom townhomes, they're amazing. We have a suite at the bottom. We have
on the main floor.
On the main floor,
right in. There's a bedroom with a bathroom.
You walk right in. Anybody that has trouble with stairs or wants to have an office on that main level for personal space to be kind of separated from the kids that maybe are upstairs. I know a lot of us work remotely these days, but we have so much natural light, even in the stairways of our 3-story townhomes. And I have seen how amazing they rent. And as far as like the HOA, it's maintenance free for me as a landlord, making sure that, the grass is getting mowed. They look beautiful outside. As long as my management company is making sure that they are taking care of the inside, it has been an amazing investment for me. What has your personal experience been?
I mean, it is great to have, because I will say I have one property where there is no HOA, and we are responsible for the landscaping. It can kind of be a headache making sure everything's in order, not just doing the maintenance, but also like making sure trees are good and all that stuff, right? So it's so nice to be able to have an investment property where all of that is taken care of. It's like you said, as long as your property manager is doing inspections and making sure that the inside of the property is being taken care of, like that's really all you have to worry about. So I think what's interesting is I got a text just this last weekend, so just like 2 or 3 days ago, from one of your buyers that bought 3 or 4 years ago in one of your townhome communities, and now they're looking at Jackson in Harriman, which is your single family community, and they're wanting to figure out what their options are with turning their house into a rental or just selling and moving into the Jackson community. So it's awesome that, I do, me as the lender, I do kind of give these options to the buyers, but it is kind of cool how not just as an investment property and like looking at, turning that old place into investment property, but that you guys have returning buyers.
I was going to say, I'm like, that's the best compliment we can ask for.
Yeah.
Somebody who 5 years ago bought a townhome with us and they've prepared themselves to be ready to jump into Jackson. Like
it's not just them. I mean, I've had a lot of people that have kind of hopped like from Parkside in Riverton with a townhome, or Rushmore in Harriman from a couple years ago, to Parkside in a single family, and then from there over to Jackson, Harriman. Like it's really cool how you can definitely see that buyers really appreciate and really like what you guys do over there. So it's pretty cool. So
we love that. What else about rentals do we need to know as far as our loan? Is that different in anything else that we've talked about specific wise that I have not touched on?
I guess one thing we could talk about, not loan wise, but there are tons of tax benefits with owning a rental property. Depreciation is a big deal. Depreciation is kind of a fake expense that you can write off on your taxes to write off any income. So if you turn a townhome into a rental property, let's say you make $15,000 on that rental income for a year. Of that, you've got your mortgage interest, you've got your property taxes, you've got any management fees, the HOA, whatever's left over. There's something called a depreciation expense, and it allows you to write off even more income. So even though you made maybe net like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in the year, really tax-wise, I'm not a CPA, but tax-wise, you can write off that income as well, and basically you're not paying any taxes on the rental income. So it is a little bit more complicated than that, but it is a huge long-term, just with owning multiple properties. Anytime home values go up, everybody whines about home prices and home values go up. But if you have 1 or 2 properties,
it's good for you.
It's
good
great,
news for you,
right? Like
and I think they're trying to get the word out. I'm a part of the Salt Lake Board of Realtors, and they did a class on cost segregation and talked about this depreciation. Obviously, like we've said, talk to your tax professional, but I think they're trying to get the word out of, there's other benefits than just your equity that you're growing.
Yeah. Tax-wise, it gets complicated. I will say that. So you got to talk to an accountant that really knows what they're doing, or someone that's done it before, and you can get into the weeds. But definitely, it is a great way to build wealth, save on taxes. The one thing that makes it hard for a lot of people is not accessing their equity when they go to buy another house. So that's the one thing that really makes it hard when keeping your old home and buying a new home is, if your home value has gone up 100,000, there are ways that we can access the equity, but it involves paying more interest. You can get a home equity line of credit. You can do a cash out refinance to get the equity out of your old house to make a larger down payment on the new one. But that is one kind of, I don't want to say bottleneck, but one barrier. The other one is that typically the new house payment is substantially more. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? If you're just gonna not use all of your equity in your old house and you're gonna buy a new one and you're buying a bigger house and rates have gone up, your mortgage payment's going to be a lot more.
Yeah.
So a lot of people get focused on that a lot, which makes sense. But if you can work through that and get through that and do it once, I think the first time is the hardest time, but then the next time you do it, it just gets that much easier and you get used to it. So, anyways.
And that's where your house hopping begins.
Yeah, that's where the house hopping begins. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so in talking about rentals with you, let's talk a scenario, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking to somebody the other day. They bring up that potentially they have been told by their lender that maybe in their situation it would not be smart to keep their home. What situations can you see where that would maybe be the case?
Well, it kind of depends, right? Because the issues that we're having right now is cash flowing properties. So because of where prices are at here in Utah, as well as interest rates, rents have not caught up and are not on par with where mortgage payments are, right?
Yeah.
Like they were 2 or 3 years ago. So it is kind of a tough situation, right? For example, so let's say someone is losing $500 a month if they were to turn their old house into a rental. So like their mortgage payment is $500 more than, well, their expenses are $500 more than what the rent would be, let's say.
Yeah.
So $500 over 12 months, so that's $6,000 a year that they would be losing for keeping the rental. And that's year one, so when they turn it into a rental. The tough part is that there are some people that, it's impossible not to focus on that, right? It's important to think like, okay, financially, we have to be in a position to where for the first couple of years or for the first 5-6 years on this, we have to be able to fork out money either for the $500 negative that we're going a month on the mortgage, or if there's something that happens with the property, we got to maintain it.
You got an eviction.
Something weird happens, flood, anything. Right? So you definitely have to focus on that, and that can bring a lot of stress. That you can only think about that negative $500, and like I get that, but there are other things that you can think about when owning a rental property. And it's something that you can weigh, right? I'm not saying that there's a yes or no, like this is the perfect thing, answer. So like, for example, one thing that you can think of is, let's say that home is $400,000. And just this last year nationwide, we went up 5% in home values. So let's say it happens again, it was 5.5%. Let's say it goes 5%. So 5% on 400,000, that's $20,000. So just by the home value going up, they would gain $20,000 in equity, but that is left in the home. So that's equity in the home. On top of that, let's say the mortgage payment pays down in that 1 year. Let's say the mortgage payment pays down the balance, let's just say $2,500 over the year. I think I'm lowballing that, but just as an example. So $2,500 is what the loan balance reduced over that year of the sort of tenant paying the mortgage.
Yeah.
So total gain is $20,000 plus $2,500, so $22,500. Okay. They're negative $5,000 in cash. So that's cash because they're basically paying out $500 a month to pay for the mortgage payment and all the expenses. So net, so $22,500 minus $6,000 cash. So that's $12,000. That's still a gain. So that's still a $12,000 gain. But I do understand that cash-wise, it is a loss, right? Now, one benefit that a lot of buyers have, or a lot of, I guess, homeowners have when there is a loss like that, is they can claim that loss on their taxes and actually save money in taxes. So if they lost $6,000 in a year, they can claim that on their taxes and save $2,500, $2,000 in taxes. Their tax bill gets reduced $2,000. So that's another gain. So not only are we $22,500, but we're almost $25,000. Okay. I'm going into a lot of numbers here, but if you look at it, there's a total net gain. Like the net gain is positive, and it's significantly positive, right? But that doesn't mean that person should automatically do it. I think it's really important when you look at your own financials, your own cash flow, like your own savings, you want to make sure that when you decide to do this, you have plenty to be able to make up that $500 difference in payment on top of any maintenance. So you want to have enough set aside to where it is so easy and smooth sailing that you don't, you're not looking every month, oh, I was 510 this month, or I was, just based on expense. Like, you don't want to do that. Nobody's going to keep a rental long-term and see the real benefits by doing that. You want to look at it from the very get-go from a long-term perspective and be able to do it easily. If you don't think you can and you're going to be nervous, I don't think it's worth it. If you're going to be nervous, if you're going to be cutting it close every month, all that stuff, I think it's better if you then sell and get a house with a lower mortgage payment in the future, because that's just going to make you happier and give you a better life.
Peace of mind is priceless.
Peace of mind. That's what I was looking for. Yeah. Peace of mind.
Yeah, so. For sure. I was going to say that all these long-term dollars sound great, but if you don't have the current physical dollars to give you that peace of mind, that's when probably the recommendation would be, like, maybe now's not the time for a rental.
And like, I think owning rental properties isn't for everyone. Like, I think, and it doesn't mean like you can't handle it. I just think there's other ways that you can invest your money. Yeah. And, obviously real estate is my passion. So I think it's the best thing in the world, but like, I think there's plenty of other ways that you can invest your money. And I think for people, like, they don't want to worry about having someone in there busting up their house, right?
Wearing their house down, calling them at night because they lock themselves out. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that come with being a landlord. And you can get around some of that with like property management and paying for a property manager, but that costs money. But I think it's a great way to build wealth, but it's also not for everyone. So a lot of times what I do with clients is I try and explain the pros and the cons. Yeah. A lot of times if you look at it long term, it's always going to be better, but doesn't mean that's the only reason you should do it. You got to make sure that your current situation is, and you got to make sure that what you're going to do is going to give you peace of mind, right? Like I learned that with like my wife and I, we bought a house because it was the best financial like decision. We bought a specific house, like it was older, but it was, the numbers were going to work with renting it out and renting out the basement. And we just didn't like being in the area. And we realized that after a couple of months, and we bought a different house. We kept the old one still, but we bought a different house, and it was more expensive, and we're not cash flowing on the rent on the other place, but we don't care, because what was important to us was being happy where we were. And so I know this doesn't really translate 100%, but I think peace of mind is kind of the like one factor that you should definitely consider. Well, I think that's something that's funny that we talk about in real estate a lot, is we say, like, if you try and time the market, you're never going to end up in the right house, right? Like you have to focus on, like you said, location may be one, layout of the house may be another, or the finish is what you want to where like you're happy there, and I think there's that happy balance of trying to find the right place in the right time, hopefully where that all like aligns.
Which I mean, I'll say this again, but I think the Jackson community is great just over there in Harriman, because it gives you the benefits. That is the ideal example for the person that we just talked about, because it gives you the benefits of selling your property, having a larger down payment, having a bigger house, better house. But it allows you in Jackson, they've got the lots that have the basement apartments. It allows you to still offset your mortgage payment a little bit by having rental income. So
have you been out to the area in Harriman surrounding Jackson?
Yeah, I love it. Over there.
It's crazy how much has developed in such a short amount of time. I don't know who else has been out there around Mountain View Village, but the shopping center, the Costco, you've got Anthropology, like the shopping and
JCW's.
JCW's.
You got
Taylor's
Houston hot
favorite.
Chicken, the best chicken sandwich I've ever had.
You've got some amazing social places to gather, and it is just, to me, it's like the new place to be out west.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of realized, we've been out there, Mountain View Village area. We've been over there like a year and a half, and we've kind of realized we've driven less and less and less like back east like to get to restaurants or stuff, just because so much more is being developed over there.
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
It's becoming available.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So
It's a great opportunity, and I think makes people feel so at home when within their neighborhood they can get all their errands and everything else done. They don't have to drive to the other side of the valley.
Yeah. If anybody has questions
Yes.
and needs numbers,
How do they reach out to you?
just look up Taylor Wright at Security National Mortgage. That's it. So also, if you go to Wright Homes, my information is on.
If you go to our
your
website and you look at our financing tab, Taylor's information will be on there. His number.
Yeah, and you can call me. They can call me. You know, I'm an open book. Like I'm long-winded sometimes, but if they ask me questions just on the phone, I'm happy to give them whatever info I can.
Well, thank you for being a good resource for our home buyers. I know they appreciate it, and we appreciate you. And thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you.
And we'll wrap it up there, but we'll talk to you again soon.